Hello, Walt from Sustainable Ramona here. Welcome back to Environmental News. On August 16th, the Climate Reality Project made two presentations to celebrate the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the IRA. As background, the Climate Reality Project has been led by former Vice President Al Gore. Eventually, the full presentation will be published, but in the meantime, Environmental News is publishing the essence of their webinar in two segments. 2A covers the impact of the law on the U.S. economy, and 2B covers provisions of the law from which consumers can benefit. So let's just jump into segment 2A.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name's Cora Wyant. I'm Director of Research at Rewiring America. We're a national nonprofit that's focused on electrifying everything. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about electrification, why it's important, and how the IRA can help you electrify. So I've already seen a bunch of great questions coming in. Keep those coming. Excited to answer those at the end, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of them throughout the presentation. So to start with why electrification matters so much, one stat that we like to use is that 42% of our energy-related emissions in the US come from decisions made around the kitchen table. So that's a huge amount of impact that individual households can have on the climate crisis. And that looks like what type of cars that we drive, how we heat our homes and our water, how we cook our food, how we dry our clothes, and where our electricity comes from. So the solution to this that we're really excited about as an organization is to electrify everything, because we know that the grid is getting cleaner at a really rapid pace. So as the grid gets clean and as we switch from using fossil fuels directly in our homes to using all efficient electric appliances, that's what leads us to household decarbonization. So I'd like to introduce you to a couple of the key technologies that will enable this household electrification. You may know about some of them already, but hopefully this will be a fun walkthrough either way. The first is a heat pump, and this is a system that can both heat and cool your home. So it replaces both your gas furnace and your air conditioner. It's a pretty amazing technology that's 3 times more efficient than a fossil fuel or electric furnace. And the way that this works is that a heat pump actually moves heat rather than generating it. So if you think about a gas furnace, you're basically burning gas to generate heat to heat your home. But what a heat pump can do is actually harvest heat from the outside and move it inside. And because it's just doing the work to move the heat rather than creating it, that allows it to have efficiencies greater than 100%. So efficiencies on the order of 300%, which is pretty incredible. It's putting 3 times the amount of heat into your home as it's using energy to move that heat. And the second key technology is a heat pump water heater. So again, same technology, but it's using it to heat your water as opposed to your typical gas or electric resistance water heater, and you'll still get all the warm showers that you need. The next technologies here are an induction stove and a heat pump dryer. So an induction stove uses electricity to cook your food, but it's much better than a typical electric resistance stove with a red coil that you might be used to. An induction stove actually induces electromagnetic fields in your pan, and by doing that, it heats the pan rather than heating sort of the cooktop element. So these are super responsive, they're fast, they're easy to clean. I have a little portable induction burner at home, and I love cooking, and it's way better than cooking with gas. I can definitely tell you that from experience, and it reduces indoor air pollution in your home. And then a heat pump dryer is a more efficient form of dryer. It's more efficient than a fossil fuel or an electric resistance dryer. And then the last two technologies here are ones you're probably familiar with, electric vehicles and rooftop solar, but all really important pieces of this household decarbonization and electrification picture. All right, so I've talked about why these are important and why this is a big part of the climate solution, but a lot of people, might think that solving the climate crisis requires making these huge sacrifices. And I want to tell you that a lot of these electric technologies are just better. They're, more fun, more enjoyable, and they can save money on your energy bills. So that's something that we like to say a lot about Rewiring America is that electric is better. So I'm going to walk you through what some of the household benefits are of each of these appliances. And the big picture here is that the average household could save about $1,700 a year on their energy bills if they electrified their home and their driving. All right, so let's walk through this technology by technology. So for a heat pump, if you switch from a furnace and an air conditioner to a heat pump, the annual bill savings across the US national average is about $370, but this really obscures a lot of variation from state to state and from fuel type to fuel type. So for example, if you're currently heating with fuel oil, propane, or electric resistance baseboards, your annual savings can be greater than $1,000 a year. And then in certain states, even if you're switching from gas, you can save many hundreds of dollars a year. And then the emissions reductions of a heat pump annually for an average household in the US are about 3 tons. And just for comparison, typically if you recycle for a year, you're going to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by about 0.1 tons. So this is 30 times the impact of recycling. And we still love recycling. Everyone should keep doing it, but that's just for a comparison to show you just how huge of an impact a heat pump can have. So a heat pump water heater, the next technology, about $140 in annual bill savings average across the US and half a ton of emissions reductions. So another huge impact thing that you can do within your home. Induction range, it's not going to really significantly change your bill savings or your emissions reductions because typically cooking is a pretty small fraction of an overall household's energy use. But the other co-benefits of an induction stove are huge, or even an electric stove. There have been a lot of studies recently showing that gas stoves, when you burn them, basically when you burn gas to cook inside your home, you also release harmful pollutants like NOx, benzene, carbon monoxide, and these are chemicals that have been linked to cancer and to respiratory illness. So for example, one big meta-analysis that combined a lot of different studies together showed that having a gas stove in the home increases the risk of childhood asthma by 42%. So by switching to electric, you're eliminating this huge source of indoor air pollution in your home. A heat pump dryer can give you also some bill savings and some emissions reductions. Again, it's a pretty small fraction of your overall energy use, but all of these projects together are really important to fully get your home off of fossil fuels. And an EV is a huge bill saver. Many of you may already know this, but you can save over $1,000 a year if you compare what you used to be spending on filling up with gas at the pump to what you're now spending on electricity car charging at home. And your emissions reductions can be 5 tons. And then solar, again, a huge bill saver, and the added benefit of resilience when paired with a battery. So that's sort of a rundown of the household benefits. As you can see, these are technologies that are not just really important climate solutions, but they're also things that will save us money on our bills, that will give us better experiences and better comfort inside our home. All right, so I want to zoom out a little bit. I've talked a bit about why electrification is important, what some of the key technologies are, and what some of the household benefits are. So now I want to talk a little bit on the macro scale about how fast we need to do this across the US. And we recently released a report at Rewiring America that we call the Pace of Progress report that really gets at the speed that we need to electrify to meet our climate goals. And the key sort of assumption underlying this report is that we want every machine in the US to be efficient and electric by 2050. So we know that we need to reach zero emissions by 2050 to meet our climate goals. And that requires everything in our households running on electricity that's powered by clean renewable energy by then. But a typical gas furnace or appliance will have a lifetime of around 15 years. So what that means is that we need to really reach 100% sales of electric appliances much sooner, because we can't be installing any more gas furnaces when we get to 2040, because that gas furnace will still be running and burning fossil fuels beyond 2050. So we did some modeling to show sort of how quickly we need to increase the sales of all these different electric appliances to reach our climate goals. And what we did here is that we looked at the typical adoption curves of other common technologies like cell phones or color TVs or refrigerators. And those adoption curves typically follow an S shape, where you have sort of early adopters at the bottom and then acceleration as the market takes off, and then sort of the later adopters at the top. So this is what our S curve looks like for electric heat pumps. And you can see basically over time what proportion of sales are heat pumps of our space heating systems. And we're getting to 100% space heating sales being heat pumps by 2035. And then what we can do is we use what's called a stock turnover model, which translates those sales each year into how many heat pumps are actually in US homes each year. And that leads you to this yellow curve, and that gets us to 100% stock of electric appliances in homes by 2050. And this gray dotted line here shows the current growth rate of the heat pump market, and the yellow line here shows the rate that we have shown that we need to reach our climate goals. And you can see what that is, that requires the heat pump market to be about 3 times the size of what it would otherwise be by 2032. So that's a lot of growth. That's a lot of progress we have to make, but it's also not anything crazy or not anything that hasn't been achieved by previous technologies. And we can also do this for all the other different types of electric machines that I mentioned. And what we've shown is that we need to increase sales of electric machines to 14 million sales above the business as usual case over the next 3 years. So 14 million sales, again, might sound like a lot, but then you realize that that's really only 1 in 10 US households taking any electrification action over the next 3 years. So that's 10% of people, either buying a heat pump when they wouldn't have otherwise, or buying an EV when they wouldn't have otherwise. And that to me seems manageable, which is really exciting. And the even better news is that because of the Inflation Reduction Act, we have incentives available that will help accelerate this adoption of household electrification. So for the last part of my presentation here, I want to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and what's in it for US households to electrify. So in the IRA, there are 2 different categories of incentives that I'll talk about. The first is tax credits, and these are basically credits that you get back when you pay your taxes each year. So important to note that this is different from a deduction, where a deduction just reduces your income. A tax credit, you actually get the full amount back that you would have otherwise paid in taxes. And these tax credits, because a lot of people in the US don't owe money on their federal taxes at the end of the year, we expect these tax credits to mostly be helpful for the higher income households in the country. And then the rebates are more targeted towards lower or moderate income households. And these are actually direct point of sale rebates on electric appliances and on efficiency upgrades. So I'll talk through both of those. So the first tax credit program here is the Energy Efficiency Tax Credit, or 25C. And this is something that's existed for a while, but it's become significantly sort of increased in scale by the IRA. And this is a 30% tax credit for residential efficiency and electrification upgrades with a maximum cap of $3,200 per year. And the way that cap works is that there are two separate caps. One is a cap for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters that's up to $2,000 a year. And one is a $1,200 cap for all other efficiency upgrades. So that includes things like insulation, doors, windows, electrical panels. And basically anyone who owes money on federal taxes, including renters, can take advantage of this energy efficiency tax credit. So that's, again, a $2,000 tax credit on installation of a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. And these are available now. So if you install a heat pump or a heat pump water heater anytime this year, starting January 1st, you can claim this tax credit when you file your taxes next year. And there are some sort of efficiency limits for heat pumps. So definitely ask your contractor to make sure that the heat pump that you're installing meets the limits required by this tax credit. So the second one here, again, has been around for a while, but it had actually started to phase out and the IRA bumped it up again. So this is the clean energy tax credit. And this is a 30% tax credit for the purchase and installation of solar panels, geothermal heat pumps, and battery storage. And this credit is actually uncapped. So whatever the cost of your install is, you can take 30% of that and get it back as a tax credit. And this applies to anyone, again, who can owe federal income taxes. And it's now through 2034, but this one is retroactive to 2022. And then one other note here is that this tax credit can be carried forward. So if you don't owe enough taxes in a given year to sort of claim the full tax credit, you can spread out this tax credit over multiple years. All right, so the next one here, I'm going to talk about two different discounts for electric vehicles. The first is for new EVs, and this is a $7,500 tax credit for purchasing a new EV. This tax credit is limited by income and by sale price of the EV. So if you make over a certain amount of income a year, or if the EV is over a certain cap, you won't qualify, but most households will qualify for this. And this is available now through 2032. There are also some specific requirements about the critical minerals, batteries, and final assembly, and how much of that has to be US based. So the federal government has actually released a list of vehicles that qualify for the tax credit that's here, and I can paste that in the chat at the end. So you can actually see directly which vehicles qualify and which are full EV versus plug-in hybrid. And then one really exciting thing about this credit is currently it's a tax credit, which means only people who owe federal taxes will be able to take this tax credit. But starting in 2024, you'll actually be able to transfer your tax credit to the dealer, meaning that it converts into an upfront discount to you. And that means this will become available to many more people and to low and moderate income households. All right, and then there's an analogous credit for used vehicles. So this is a $4,000 tax credit for purchasing a used EV. Again, there are certain income limits and vehicle sale price limits, but this is available from now through 2032. And then the same thing happens that starting in 2024, this credit becomes transferable to the dealer and converts into an upfront discount. So those are the two EV-related tax credits that become upfront discounts starting next year. All right, so then the final two programs I'm going to talk about are consumer rebate programs. So the first is the electrification rebates. This is one that we're really excited about because we helped to lobby for this and working on sort of writing it, figuring out the amounts, and getting it passed in the IRA process. So these are point of sale rebates for electric appliances that include heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, induction stoves, rewiring. And the total cap on those rebates for a given household is $14,000. But individual appliances also have their own caps. So for example, for a heat pump, you can get up to $8,000. For a heat pump water heater, you can get up to $1,750. Then for a stove or for a dryer, it's up to $840. And these are available to only low or moderate income households. Low income households will get 100% of project costs covered up to that per equipment cap. And moderate income households will get 50% covered up to that cap per equipment. And these are not available yet. So the way that this works is that the Department of Energy has issued guidance, and now all the state energy offices have to separately apply to make their own programs. So we expect this to take a little while, and we expect a rollout either late this year or next year. This program has a total cap of $4.5 billion, which sounds like a lot, but I think it'll go quickly. So, if you're planning an electrification upgrade, I would say, do it and take advantage of the tax credits if you can, because we're not certain that everyone who wants to will be able to access these rebates. And then finally, the efficiency rebates here. So these are rebates for projects that improve a home's energy efficiency. And there are two ways you can kind of calculate that. You can either model the reductions or you can measure the reductions. And the total amount of rebate that you get depends on sort of the level of energy savings that you see, but it can be up to $8,000. And rebates for low-income households are doubled. So again, similar process, and we expect these to roll out either late this year or sometime next year. All right, so that was a lot of information. So I've got kind of a cheat sheet here of all the different electrification related programs within the IRA. So just to recap, there are these two home energy tax credit programs. First one gives you up to $2,000 for a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. Second one is a 30% tax credit on solar and storage. Then there's these EV tax credits, either $7,500 for new or $4,000 for used EVs. And then there are these two home energy rebate programs, and these ones are not available yet, but we're hoping that they'll be available soon. And we'd like to send everyone to a tool that we've developed that's a very easy and straightforward tool to figure out for your income situation and your location, which of these do you qualify for? And that's our IRA calculator. There's a QR code and a website here, and it'll calculate your personalized incentives based on how you file your taxes, what your income is, and where you live. And then one other useful tool that I want to make a plug for, because it's something that we just launched and we're really excited about, is our consumer-facing website. This is homes.rewiringamerica.org. And this has a lot of really useful information on individual electrification projects. It has step-by-step project guides. It's got lots of useful articles, some FAQs. So definitely check this out too. And we're going to be launching a personalized version of this. And you can sign up for that if you click this Make a Plan button on the consumer site page. So that tool is going to be pretty exciting too. It will allow you to enter in your address and get a personalized plan and set of savings for your specific home. So with that, I'll conclude, and thanks for having me here, and really looking forward to answering some questions.